Hey everybody, welcome back to Old World Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host Mike, and with me as always is Evan.
Almost wooden spoon last place. I did win the last game. I was
You
tied for
did.
last at round three,
You
and
did,
then
sir.
yeah, that was great. I loved it.
Yeah, so I think we're going to do something a little bit different this time. I know in a lot of our other events, we definitely do want to acknowledge some of the winners and such, but we want to give you some of our takeaways from our Horrors of the Old World event. This is our second year running it, but I think the biggest difference between last year and this year is last year was a singles event, and this time it was a doubles event. So that was really exciting. So this is our first doubles event, Evan, that we've run, certainly for Old World. I know there's at least got to be a few other communities out there who have run one as well. I know we're not the only ones who have done it, though it's not something that seems to be taking off yet, or not as often as the singles format or or your team format. So it's definitely something we were excited to do, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. I think that was the interesting thing. How did we even
Yeah,
begin the conversation where we said let's run a doubles event? I think we were started with we've been doing singles very successfully for a year and a half. And I think we've been talking about, all right, I think the community's established enough. We could start offering some more variety, right?
yeah, and I think that there was this, at least on my side, like, are we gonna do another singles 2,000 point event where my list stays the same? I mean, I have 8 armies, so I get to just change my army. That's what I do, but that is not what
Hmm.
most people do. Most people are have one or two or whatever, and they have one that they're really excited to play at the moment. And if you have the same number of points and the meta is basically the same, then you're often just using the same army on the same terrain, right?
Hmm.
Kind of over and over.
Yeah.
So we want to do something different.
Yeah, and so I think that was an interesting where we started with the conversation of that, and particularly because even year one, I think we were a little reluctant to do that because year one of running all the events and all the everything with Old World Legends was we were starting to we wanted to out of the gate do a lot more, more exciting scenarios, more variety, more this and more that, more objective based stuff, and just the community wasn't ready for it during the first year. So many people were just starting to get into the hobby or coming back to the hobby or haven't played in a long time, and they just weren't ready for that level of variety. And so a lot of the feedback we got year one was, hey Mike, hey Evan, we're just learning the rules. Could we just, do the fundamentals, more pitch battle and such? And then towards the end of year one, the community started to say, okay, let's start trying out with some objectives. Let's give that a go. And Evan spearheaded a bunch of that before the match play guide came out, right? We started to introduce more objective play and such, and that was received very well. And exactly to your point, though. So, like, we typically, we run an event every month throughout the year, which is great, except December. And then we wanted to, but we have three of those are big events or our 2 day events, right? We use the GT label because everyone's used to that, but we like to use the term event, right?
Yeah.
Because we do a lot more than just the games. We do a fun bingo, we do trivia, we sportsmanship is our top prize. We've talked about this on many of our episodes and such. But we wanted to start mixing up like, okay, is the community ready to try something new? And there was a little bit of trepidation, like, will people show up and embrace this, or
Yeah.
are they going to be really negative about it? We just, and honestly, we weren't sure. And you can ask people, which we do all the time, hey, what do you think? What do you want? But you never really know until you put the sign up live and see if people are actually going to register.
Yep. Yep. You kind of have to just pull the trigger and then, oh, wow, 32 people want to come. That's crazy. And there was
Yeah, that
definitely
was
a lot
crazy.
of people who were dragged there by their partner, which was fun. And I know that we had at least one person use the phrase, I'm hooked now, to describe
Hmm.
their interaction with it. So
Yeah, they
that's
had a
great.
great experience. So I think the exciting thing is that year one of starting the community here for us in Southern California, I think our peak at our 2 day events was 14 players showed up. We had more players register, but 14 players showed up. But this is pretty amazing. And a lot of the people who were registering last year, again, it was the typical. Everyone's so busy. Everyone has such a busy life, so many other activities. They were signing up, the last couple weeks beforehand. This is just so different, right? We announced it, 3 months before the event, give or take. We told people we are excited about doubles, and we had the player packet out of the gate right away. And again, high level format is for those of you who haven't watched the other episodes: 3,000 points, 1,500 points per side, and you can't play the same army with your partner, right? So that's the high level format. We're really excited about it. And wow, not only did now this year our record before in the summer was or earlier in the year was 24 players at our events. This is the first time we've had 32, 32 players registered. Almost all of those, 30 of those registrations were more than a month out. Actually, most of them were within the first month. Players were so excited for this. And then they were just trying to figure out their teammate. We had a bunch of people sign up who just wanted, who didn't even have their teammate selected. They're just like, I'm going to this. I want to do this. This sounds super
Right.
exciting. And then they went and found a teammate, which was great. And everyone we're just collecting our feedback. It was a really successful event. It turned out great, but it was pretty amazing. Not only did we have our highest turnout yet, as the community is growing, we had a lot of our repeat event attendees as well. But we also had, I think, 4 different teams that this was their first event they had ever been to. And in fact, because it was a doubles format, because they were with a friend, right, to go into that, they were more comfortable. It was more inviting, and it got them to show up. And out of 32 registered players, 32 showed up, both day 1 and day 2. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I've never run an event where that's happened.
Yeah, and that's just a testament to, well, first of all, that people had fun, right? That they came back the second day for sure, and
Hmm.
also that maybe having a team member or someone you're more accountable to makes you be like, yeah, you know what, I'm definitely gonna go. I'm definitely gonna make this happen. So that's always good. I know we don't
Hmm.
usually have that level of attendance, but I love that. Um, I mean, I personally had a bit of a rough day one. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but um, I when I saw that 32 people were coming, I made an assumption that that meant that a lot of people were getting into this pretty new and were
Hmm.
bringing just armies that they had been sitting on for a long time, or were kind of joining the community and were being a little more casual. It seemed to be the opposite that ended up what happened, where most people that were coming were actually more of a competitive mindset, and perhaps it was also that whole team dynamic of, oh, I have one person on the team who really is trying hard to win, and they kind of drag up the list hardness of their teammate to try to
Hmm.
build synergies and try to make sure that they have the best that they can do. And I did the opposite, and yeah, because I
You
was
weren't alone, though. You weren't alone. There were definitely players, but yes, I think
right.
to your point, we definitely had 2 halves of the room, and I'd say it was more than halves. I'd say 70% showed up with a fairly skewed list. We'll talk about those in a second, and then about 30% showed up, like Evan's team, right, or a much more thematic fun list. And I think generally we have more of those thematic fun lists show up to the events, but this time I think we had more of the attendance go towards the skew list, and that was, again, we didn't know what was going to happen, and it was really interesting too because as soon as you drop it to 1,500 points, that means you can't take a 500-point character, right? Now you're restricted to any character unit to 375. Now there's a couple ways that you can squeeze in a dragon here or there, like the Warpfire Dragon and such. And there's a couple other scenarios like that. But generally speaking, you couldn't take those big beefy characters with all the different items and saves. So it was interesting to see what were players going to show up with, and we just didn't know.
Yes. And well, you just said, Mike, that you can't take a beefy character with a bunch of wounds and saves unless if you're basically one of like 2 or 3 factions that can still do that. And one of them is Cathay, because the Sky Lantern is so cheap that you can very easily have the Lord Magistrate with basically any item you want and still be mounted on a Sky Lantern and be under that price point. Whereas other
Mhm,
factions
mhm.
pay a much more reasonable price for those kind of units and then couldn't take them. And I don't know whether that led into the desire for more Cathay players. For example, there was 5 out of 32, but remember that's
I'm
also
another two. That's not that
yeah,
bad.
but it's
Yeah,
5 out of 16 teams had a Cathay player, right? So
that is true.
it's so it kind of doubles your chance of playing against someone who had that, as opposed to a singles
Yeah,
event, which is interesting. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and
But
then
to your point, before we move
yeah,
on from that, in terms of the armies that do or don't, I think you make an interesting point there. It is a different meta standpoint, right? This is effectively a very different meta in the doubles format, and that 375 point because of that 1,500 per player per team, right? The character on the Sky Lantern is a good example of still a very effective character that fits under that price point. There are a couple other examples to your point. This is where, for instance, the Black Orc War Boss on a Wyvern fits under that points threshold. It could be very, very effective. And there's a few others, but I think it is interesting. I've mentioned this before. There's always the alpha predator in the different meta at any given time, but a lot of the other alpha predators that are 400 points or 450 points, whether it's that Chaos Lord on a Dragon or some other really awesome combos out there, they couldn't be fielded in this price point bracket. So it actually shifted. Well, when one alpha predator is moved to the side, another alpha predator takes its place. So this is very interesting to see what happened, how it played out.
yeah, and also I think the thing that we found out is that if you don't allow units to be over 375, but you still have 3,000 per each side, what you end up with is kind of a very heavy shooting meta because most shooting units can be effective at under that size, or you can get multiple
Yeah.
shooting units like multiple catapults or multiple cannons to all team up on a single target, which is the same as normal, but that those targets that they're shooting at, like any kind of melee unit, can't be as durable, can't be as large. So you don't have
Hmm.
10 Blood Knights that are all in one unit. You have to have, fewer. And then you don't have the Chaos Lord and Dragon, I mean, basically, if you're playing Chaos, the only dragon you play is the Warfire Dragon because none of the other ones will fit under that price point. So the match play guide, I don't think makes sense under 2,000, which was probably what it was intended for. Was at 2,000 points because of
Hmm.
that. Also, because of the number of points we had on the table, it was a very target-rich environment, and we had to remove some of the terrain. So essentially, there was often just totally open sight lines for any and all kinds of shooting. So if your army was just, I'm going to sit here and shoot at you, it definitely benefited a lot from that. And I personally took in a completely melee force of Empire Knights who, when you're shooting at both Empire Knights and Tomb Kings, why shoot at the Tomb Kings? They can just heal all their wounds. So people kind of just targeted all of their shooting at my guys, which
Yeah.
is a problem I didn't really
Oops.
oversee, right? I didn't foresee that
Yeah,
happening.
well, but we didn't know, right? Nobody knew what
Yeah,
was going to happen, and that's what made this so. I think that's one of the reasons why this is so exciting, and certainly, and we'll get more to rotating events throughout the year, not just doing the same thing. But I think you make a good point. There is one of the things I was concerned about is typically we do have a little bit more terrain on the table, and that works great. We've balanced it, we've play tested it so
yeah,
many times at this point for 2,000 points versus 2,000 points. But we knew people were going to be fielding larger 3,000 point lists, and in particular, some people brought definitely some horde lists, right? And so we got to the point where we're like, we preemptively removed a few, not on every table, but a few of the tables, some of the impassable pieces of terrain, because we knew it'd be a huge traffic jam. And it's not necessarily highlighted in this picture, but there are definitely other pictures where we had some of the horde armies versus horde armies. And if we had left the impassable terrain as it normally is the same format, they wouldn't necessarily be able to deploy their armies entirely because they had so many models or it was really would have created some unfortunate traffic jams on the table. So we, again, doing our best estimate, we felt not having the impassable terrain reduce the fun factor of some of those players is the right way to go. Now, some tables didn't really have it, like the jungle table is mostly forest, so it wasn't really affecting that table. But it was inherently, because we did that, though, it did make just the gun focused armies more powerful because there were less places to hide, because there was less terrain to hide behind, and because there were so many models on the table with 3,000 points for 3,000 points. You always had great targets to shoot at because there
yeah.
were just, if you wanted to move forward, you have to move into the open. There was no other option, and because there was just so many models, so that was, I think those two compounded on each other. And then to your point, Evan, because you didn't have those that chaos, that character with 8-9 wounds with a 2-up save and a 5-up ward and a 5-up regen, who's generally fairly effective at surviving those missile weapons. Because that alpha predator was removed, those war machines were significantly more effective at what they were shooting at, and because of the open boards, they were able to target more things. And we definitely saw that with a lot of the lists that people brought across all the factions. This wasn't Cathay specific. We saw a lot of combos with Empire and cannons and war machines. We saw some combos with some Tomb Kings and a lot of shooting. We saw combos with orcs and a lot of shooting. We
Yeah.
saw heavily the skew lists. The vast majority of them were heavily skewed towards ranged power. And because it was 1,500 points of two different factions, it was 1,500 points with the maximum best artillery for each faction versus
Right.
3,000 points where it would actually have been less gunfire, ranged attacks if it had been 3,000 points of a single force. And so we didn't foresee that was going to happen. And oh boy, it was pretty consistent across a lot of the armies, wasn't it?
It was, and we will say though, however, that the winners of the event was Greg and Tyler, who were playing Vampire Counts and
Zach,
Tomb
Greg and
Kings.
Zach.
Oh, sorry, Greg and Zach. They were playing Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings, and they did not. Their shooting was they had a Banshee and a Mortis engine, and stuff like that. I don't know if there was even a screaming call catapult. So
No.
they had a shooting list that was also based around attrition, and it was not like a long range shooting list. It was, I'm going to walk to the middle of the table. It's really hard to kill these units when you don't have some of those kind of tools that you often would have. And even
Mhm.
375 points of Grave Guard are incredibly difficult to deal with for like the vast majority of people, even if they are shooting at it, because they are just so durable. I watched through 4 games as my 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 co general Andres and his Tomb Guard And Tomb Guard only have light armor, so that's kind of the main difference between the Tomb Guard and the Grave Guard. And I saw how many
Hmm.
Tomb Guard would just die over and over. There is a photo in here eventually of how 21 Tomb Guard were killed by 2 Sky Lanterns in one turn. There's a big pile of the dead. So, in Vampire Counts don't have that problem because they're a lot more durable. So just to say, yeah, there's a more shooting meta. I think that that's also just a thing in singles anyway right now. And I think one of the main reasons for that is that I think that the match play guide actually didn't really fix Warhammer. The match play guide introduces the concept of objectives that are really interesting, but it doesn't scale those objectives based on how many points you have on the table. So if you have 3,000 points
Yeah.
on the table, the match play guide is like, cool, you do the same thing, and they're still worth, let's say, 30 each for each strategic
Hmm.
location. And the solution the match play guide kind of suggests is okay, but like just use multiple objectives at the same time, like table quarters, strategic locations, baggage train. Do all of that at the same time, and that's like really confusing, and it makes all the battles kind of the
It's
same because you're always doing the same 3 things
it's
or
too
whatever.
much. It's overwhelming for players, and it's one of those
Right.
interesting things that objectives are great, and it's that constant
Yeah.
challenge as a TO. I can tell you with all these events is we want objectives to be more meaningful, to discourage less gun lines and encourage more mixed combined arms forces, because those are generally more fun for both players to play against. But the more that we keep increasing the points of the objectives, the more complaints I get from players who are saying, I just want to use my gun line. You're making the objectives too many points, right? And it's just that constant, and that's the benefit of when GW releases rules is they're generally instantly embraced by the community. This is pretty universal for tabletop gamers, and this isn't specific to Old World. We're like, cool, it's official rules from the game manufacturers. I want to use the official rules, and quite frankly, I feel that way too. A lot of people, you want to use the real rules that the game makers are making, and so that is very much a real thing. And so again, the more you start deviating from those, the more house rules, the more custom rules you make for your community, the more uncomfortable people get. In fact, pretty quickly, it becomes a barrier and a reason for them to not show up. So our goal has always been from the beginning, what are the fewest tweaks, the fewest FAQs, the fewest legacy things we need to make rulings for to motivate people to be excited to put their army on the table. We're not trying to rebalance the game. We're trying to just make sure as many players that show up have a great time as possible. But it definitely, we saw the match play guide, to Evan's point exactly, did not skew well. And then ultimately, in particular, once we had those, this whole point was to restrict how many points you could spend on a character or unit. It actually became more of an issue in this kind of format than typically would have been in a 2,000 versus 2,000 point game.
Yeah, for sure. And I personally say boo-hoo. Warhammer isn't supposed to be played sitting down. Like that's personally my vibe. Is like, okay, I get it, you're playing dwarves, but like when somebody skews their army into any one particular aspect of the game, it can be very powerful and very unfun to play against. Unless if you
Mhm.
are a very like I'm saying top 5% of players in the world have find it an interesting challenge to say, okay, your army is all ethereal, or your army is all cannons and shooting and running away from me, or your army is all flying, and say, that's an interesting challenge. I want to figure out how to solve that problem and be good against you. Most people don't want that, and they don't find it fun, and they find skewing into any one particular area of the game less enjoyable than playing against an army that looks like one of the ones from the core rulebook. And I have got some ideas about that for the narrative game event that we're having coming up soon, because I don't think that a lot of the armies that came to this event really fit what I'm imagining in my head for, okay, we're having some war in Westerland trying to get, capture Friedel the Chainmaker and stuff. If every single Chaos Lord is always riding a dragon, then what the hell is Friedel? Like, why is she so important? Right?
Yeah.
Because she's on
That
foot.
being said,
Yeah.
while we are focusing mostly on starting this conversation, a lot of the meta challenges, I will say this: the event, like we said, was a huge success. All the surveys we have, well more than half of them
Yes.
are coming back right now. Players had a fantastic time, despite we're just hyper focused at the beginning of this on the meta. People had a great time at the event. They absolutely loved. In fact, a lot of people said doubles is now. This is the first time they played doubles, and they absolutely had more fun playing with a friend, having someone to strategize with and play with. We did also make it 4-hour rounds, so it was only four
Yeah, that
games
makes sense.
in total versus 5 games. Feedback was incredibly positive, and almost universally, we're almost at again, waiting for a few more surveys. We're well over 90% of players who said, if we run this exact same event next year, would you you want to show up? And overwhelmingly they said 5 out of 5, yes, I'll be there next year. So clearly doubles format is very popular. Hanging out with your friends is very popular. People had a great time. I'm excited to run this again. I think what we're trying to take away from this is how could we do this better,
Yeah,
right? So
for sure.
we more or less we ran this event out of the book, right? If you will, like, okay,
Kind of, yeah.
we've never
Yeah.
done this before, fairly out of the book with only a couple minor tweaks, and we're realizing, oh, okay, there are some good things. People love hanging out with their friends. They love the coming up with new list ideas that you are normally not allowed to do. That was super exciting and motivating and encouraged a lot of players to field units they might not have fielded this and that, but it did inherently lend towards more skew lists. So we don't have the answer today, but it's definitely something we're going to be thinking about next year, right? We've been asking ourselves and in reading the feedback, all right, do we drop it to what if it was only 1,000 points per side per player versus 1,500? Would that actually solve the problem? Or do we need to have different scenarios to encourage you to do different things? Of course, part of the, we're talking about a meta that exists today, which is fairly Cathay dominated, but we all know 3 months from now, 6 months from now, it's going to be a completely different meta. And next year in the fall, it's going to be a completely different meta then too. So we don't really know what the meta will be at that time because it's always constantly evolving. But I think big success. Players had a lot of fun. I think they enjoyed the 4-hour rounds. I think that was one of my biggest challenges,
For
was
sure.
constantly yelling at people, you have 3 hours left. You have 2 hours left. You're going from table to table and making eye contact with people. You heard me. You have 2 hours left because
Yeah,
you're
like,
so
hurry up.
focused on the game in front of you.
Yeah.
And such. So, again, overwhelmingly positive feedback. So besides meta stuff, what else were some of your other takeaways, Evan, from the weekend? What else do you think went really well, or what do you think we could do better next time?
So I think that the 5 round events where you do 3 on the first day, which is already a
Mm-hmm.
lot, and then you're tired, and then you want to come back the
Mm-hmm.
second day, it can be very exhausting. And I know that 5 round events have been getting a lot less popular amongst attendants of all around the world recently, in Warhammer the Old
Mm-hmm.
World in particular. So
Mm-hmm.
more people going to those 1 day events, and there is a question of, is it because it's 1 day, or is it because it's not 5 games? Is 5 games just too many? I mean, I in particular felt
Yeah.
after 2 games, I was like, man, I really want to go change my list a little bit.
And that's
Um,
interesting to your point, because I remember back, not old world specific, but tabletop gaming, just go back a few years, 6 games was the standard, right?
oh,
For
really?
many years, it was
Yeah.
3 games day one, 3 games day two was the dominant standard. And then I'd say over the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years, it really has shifted from 6 games to 5 games is much more the standard. 3 on day one, 2 on day two. Of course, there are still some exceptions like LVO and some of the other bigger events that still do 3 and 3 both days. But it was very interesting. This is our first time where we felt, and we asked our community, we've asked them before, are you comfortable doing less than 5 games, at a 2 day event? And the majority of them said they want 5 games still. But then this is the first time we said, well, we know we need more time because there's 3,000 points per side. So we have to make it 4 hours. Otherwise, people won't finish their games or get far enough in their games. So we really can only fit 2 per day. And so far, the feedback's been coming back. Actually, a lot of players saying, you know what? I've not played a 4 game event before, but they actually are saying, I prefer this because they
Yeah.
went home less exhausted on day one. And I do believe that was a contributing factor to them being more motivated and have more energy to come back day two because they were less exhausted, right?
Yes, definitely, definitely. I certainly was in that camp. I think we should also just mention that when you play doubles, there is this concept of, and I think a lot of people enjoyed this a lot, which was, okay, how do I kind of conspire with my opponent and discuss, or with my partner, and discuss like what our kind of overall plans are, especially how to deploy. And you have to do that without
Mm-hmm.
spending a lot of time. And you also have to do it kind of right in front of your opponents. So you have to try to be like,
Yeah.
so you do that,
So shh.
and
Yeah,
that's
but
and
don't look
that's
at
like
me. Don't
really
look at
cool,
me.
like role playing. Just from a role playing sense, it feels fun to be like, we have a scheme we're doing here. Um, yeah, and so that's cool. My partner was getting over a cold, so he was like, "I'm really tired. You tell me what to do." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. It was definitely interesting, and I think there's some pros and cons to that. I think some players are like, "Hey, let me take a turn,"
Yeah,
with their teammate. But I also think there were some players who actually were just more comfortable being at the table with a buddy, right?
yeah,
And I think a lot of people, actually, a lot of the room actually enjoyed that a lot more. In fact, like to your point, we had a couple, some would say they're absolutely hooked after this. I had at least two people come up to me individually and say, "This is my favorite. I've never done doubles before. This is my favorite format. I only want to play this going forward." Now, of course, we're not going to keep doing this every single event. Again, we have 3 big events a year. Our current plan is that summer are at PSO as we did last year. Hopefully, we get to do that again going forward. But that's our big singles event. Fall, this is very successful, so I imagine we'll do doubles again next fall. But we are looking for earlier in the year at our February March event to try something different. And we've been talking to a whole bunch of the community in some of our other videos about running a narrative event just to mix it up. And I think that's worth talking about for a second, because we weren't sure what was going to happen. Can we break away from just running the singles? Because you see that in 40K, right, or other tabletop game systems where they have one format and it's always the same format every single time. And we're like, nope, we're gonna. And they do teams though. That is worth saying. Teams is a very popular format of 40K too, but that's really just singles with more people. But to be fair, it does make it more fun in my opinion. But this is a very different format, and I think Old World, the system, the depth of the system, despite the bumps we ran into, the lessons we're learning, how do we make it more enjoyable for everybody? The format held the core rules held up pretty well for, you want to play with a buddy by your side. It actually worked pretty well.
So in 8th edition, there was this thing called the Triumph and Treachery expansion, which had to explain to you how to do this, how to play with more than 2 people, because you had a pool of magic dice that you had to spend on casting and dispelling spells every turn. And what happens if you have 2 people on one team? Like, do they share those? Do they both get separate? All that kind of stuff. And because Old World kind of streamlined some of those things and made some of those phases a bit more explicit, it really helps to be like, yeah, we could just have 2 people. What one of the things that we learned quickly when we were doing some practice games for this was, okay, if it doesn't matter, have 2 different people split off with your opponent and just roll out different combats on different sides of the table at the same time. So if you've got over here, like I have the Demogryph Knights fighting against Gary's Chaos Warriors on the right-hand side. Meanwhile, there's skeletons fighting some Bretonnian Squires on the left-hand side. We can just roll those combats at the same time with at least one other opponent, and then just see what happens. And that really helps speed things up once you start getting to that kind of combat phase, if the combat ever happens. Which did in a couple of my games, and didn't happen so much.
But definitely did others. And I think. And I could tell you as the TO, the biggest doubles thing I ran into, one thing I hadn't thought of in advance. I had tackled most of the doubles situations and put it in the player packet. I forgot about, hey, how does Fated Dispel work? Because a lot of teams were like, could we both get a Fated Dispel? Also, at the event, I decided no, ultimately it's 1 per team. We'll see if we continue to do that next year or not. But the biggest kerfluffle, the doubles we kept running into that caught players off guard, because let's face it, no one likes to read. It was that, no, you cannot use your ally's general, his inspiring presence, nor can you use your ally's BSB. That is specifically in the core rulebook for allies. In that big block of text, you can benefit from spells and things that affect friendly, abilities that affect all friendly units, but you can't use those. And that definitely caught some players off guard. In fact, there were actually some players who specifically were deploying and positioning their units to benefit from 2 generals and to benefit from 2 BSBs. And then once I had to come over and tell them, sorry, no, you don't. Usually that was a very sad face of the person on the other side realizing a unit just fell off the table because they assumed they were using their allies' BSB, and I had to tell them sorry.
Yeah, and that's because what we basically said is exactly the same thing as the match play guide, which is, hey, if you're going to play a doubles event, you treat the other player on your team as like your allied force. And the allied forces, a lot of people don't know this because they're either new to the game or because allies were kind of banned at tournaments very early on, they're like a separate army that have a separate general, separate BSB. They don't share any of that stuff. The only thing we didn't do is we didn't use the suspicious or the untrustworthy ally rules because they're unbelievably complicated. So it's like, oh, if I fall back in good order through my allied force, I take peril tests if they're this kind of an ally. But if they're this other kind,
a lot.
Yeah, if they're this other kind, then I can't trigger panic tests in my ally because they don't care if I run away. Like there's like this unbelievably complicated list of things that would be really easy to just completely forget. People didn't even know about the whole general thing. So imagine if they were trying to do suspicious allies and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, even before doubles, the number one thing I have to keep reminding people at any event is remember their scenario, remember the objectives, right? Because people get so caught up in the heat of the battle and the bloodlust of wanting to wipe out the enemy army, they forget that there's a way I can score points besides killing things. So that was no different in a doubles event.
Yeah, and it's of course, I think that I'm a little bit more of a cautious player. I'm usually thinking about, okay, how do I not die? And that's usually the more of the motive, the thing I'm immediately thinking about. How do I move, or how do I make a cast the right spell so that I'm not gonna about to lose all my guys? But I think most people are a
Mhm,
bit more action oriented, where they're like, okay, how do I get a good cannon shot lined up on this target, or something like that? And that's kind of what they're
mhm.
thinking about when they're playing. Um, so, just we're not going to do like a full battle report of every single one, but I want to say, because I did bring a very thematic list, and in my first two games, I was like, oh wow, I'm really outgunned. But
Well, let's go
game,
through one. Let's pick one of your favorite games and go through that.
I think this game was my favorite. So this was the last game. This was game 4 here against my good friend Eric and his dad Gary. Eric was playing his Bretonians.
Oh,
He
by the way,
was
they won our best sportsmanship
yes,
overwhelmingly. Congratulations, gentlemen! That is the most important award at our event. Is the team that gets sportsmanship? And yes, they both got a trophy and both got prizes. And we always let best sportsmanship actually get to pick the first prize at our events. I know sportsmanship is been not used as much in other tabletop gaming communities. Certainly, it has fallen off in the 40K or AOS community. Is not a common thing. We have consistently sportsmanship is our most important award at the event. We say it at the beginning, we say it at the end. And so, again, congratulations to Gary and Eric. The most important thing is everybody wants to play games with you next time.
yes. So I want to talk more about sportsmanship in a little while, because at the end of the first day, I kind of failed my sportsmanship test. That was my joke that I said.
We're all human.
Yeah, and I think it was just getting frazzled after losing a large section of my armies kind of in like one or two turns, and it definitely felt like I didn't have a lot of ways to engage the opponent. And again, that's something that can just happen when if the game just allows you to have a very unengaging army as just a legal army list, then you can have a very unengaging game. But when I say engagement, what I mean is no matter what I do, you're gonna win, or no matter what I do, that spell's gonna go off, or no matter what I do, you can move to this one spot and I can't stop you. So engagement is when there's decisions, there's like tactical decision making, or there's dice rolls. It can either be that I can choose to do the right potential strategic move, or that there's some kind of a dice roll that if I got lucky, something will happen. But unengaging is no, you have no way to do anything. So I'm ethereal, you can't hurt me at all. I've got like -3 to hits, you can't hit me at all. That kind of thing is I'm unengaging, so you can't engage with me. And we're definitely going to circle back to that when I make a video complaining about balloons. But this game
Different
was,
video.
yeah,
Different
different
video.
video. We're going to be very positive because this was my favorite
Different
game.
video.
Um, so I brought the Knights Panther, which when you play against having some chaos on the other side of the field and you actually have hatred against them, they're great. In my first 3 games, there was no
Oh, yeah.
chaos, so all I had was okay. I have MR1 and I can reroll ones on charges, and I only ever rolled a 1 on a charge once. Um, but whatever. And then when you have hatred
Yeah.
versus
But
chaos, it's like this is
inherently,
great.
but when you're rolling two dice and you pick the highest, right?
How often
That
does a
is
one happen?
inherently re-rolling the one is less valuable. I mean, it's still you could re-roll it, right? But odds are pretty on two dice. And inherently, it's less powerful than if you're only rolling one dice and re-rolling the
So
one.
what I found, Mike, was that the rerolling ones was very useful for okay, I'm going to be having to go through difficult terrain, so I'm going to pick the worst
Mm,
of the two. And being able to reroll a 1 meant that I was much more able to say, yeah, I'm probably going to make it. I'm not going to fail this charge because
that makes
if I
sense.
do roll a 1, I get to reroll it. And even and that's something that was pretty useful because I
Makes a
only
lot of sense
don't get
because we're
that.
saying
Yeah,
if you roll two dice and pick the highest, it's less meaningful. Well, if you're going through terrain, you're rolling two dice and picking the lowest. Now it is actually substantially more meaningful, and you might be willing to declare some charges that you wouldn't have done otherwise.
yeah, or more interesting to me is I get to put my unit in a spot that I would have to not go to otherwise. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm
it's a good
cool. I'm
point.
I'm willing to go to this particular place because on the next turn I think I can make make the charge through there. And with Empire, with these inner circle knights who have drilled, you very often want to be able to use counter charge or during your charge to reform out to get as wide as possible. So you're really likely to have to say, okay, if I want to go as wide as I can to make it to the enemy, I'm probably going to hit terrain
Mm,
of some kind, and then I
mhm,
suddenly
mhm.
have to take the lower of the two dice. So that was great. I think that that's a cool rule. And I mentioned to you during the day that I wanted to play Knightly Order because I wanted to have knights that actually had some special rules. Yes, you could just take a Grandmaster, some Demogryphs, and some Knights as a Grand Army Empire list and not pay 2 or 3 points per guy to get an upgrade that maybe doesn't do anything. But then you're just Empire, where most of their units don't have any faction rule at all, unless if
If
you're
you wanted
playing as
knights with
Cathay.
special rules, you could have gone chaos, but that's a different story. So let's focus on what happened in this game.
No, I chose to play Toughness 3 Knights, Mike. Um,
You did.
Yeah, so there's some enemies and opponents or armies that the toughness 3 knights are freaking fantastic against. Like when I played game 3 against the
Hmm.
Bretonians and the High Elves. Yeah, like their bow shots and stuff, it's great. You know, being toughness 3 is fine. And then when
Hmm.
you play against Cathay with the Dragonfire bombs, the strength 4 versus your toughness 3 matters a lot. When you play
A
against,
lot.
lances that are their strength 5 and then they still win you on twos when because your toughness 3 matters a lot.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the other thing about this is that I really wanted to play an army where, okay, Empire's whole thing is that they have like full plate armor. So I want to have knights that actually have that and have the 2+ armor save, at least, against shooting or whatever. Because the
Hmm.
core Empire Knights have heavy armor. So the core Empire Knights are just Bretonian knights that forgot how to pray. And I don't get that. Like, I don't understand. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So I wanted to play some knights that had full plate armor. So that's why I'm doing this, right? Um,
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had a good matchup, right? Because we have some chaos for me to fight against. My general was Harold Gammonson, and if you don't know this, Harold Gammonson he has hatred against chaos. He's got
Hmm.
weapon skill 7. He's the only Empire character to have weapon skill 7. I'm sure. As far as
It's
I think.
great.
He
I'm
has
pretty
4
sure.
attacks, which is good. And then he gets to reroll to wound versus Beastmen only, but he also has Killing Blow on his weapon. So because you have the I can challenge twice thing, if you charge into an enemy unit that's infantry or cavalry and they have a character in there, Herald can challenge. If they accept with a champion, you can just kill that dude and challenge a second time, and now they have to accept with the character, or else they go to the back, their buff turns off, they don't fight,
That's
whatever.
really cool. He's the only one in the game who has that ability, right?
Yeah, and so that came up this game, and when that comes up, it's like, oh boy, is that freaking cool.
Because
Um,
it never comes up. So the one time when it does, like, yes,
yeah, so
yes, I get to use my special thing.
right here in the center of the battle line is a Chaos Lord on horse with his Chaos Knights. These are like
Hmm.
35-year-old Chaos Knights, by the way. Um,
They're awesome.
and over here is the Sorcerer Lord on foot. So we've got 2 Chaos guys who are, killing blowable on the battlefield that I have hatred against. And we definitely had this problem because Andres, my partner I play with, he likes to bring lots of infantry. So we just had traffic jam problems all the time. Um,
Hmm.
and so we deployed and I kind of rushed forwards. I cast Oaken Shield with my Ring of Tal on my Knights of the White Wolf from the Priest. And I just was like, great, I'm going to have to countercharge against Peg Knights, a Chariot, a Warp. I don't even know how much stuff's going to charge me, but whatever. I got to go in there because there's not enough room. Like, what else we're going to do? Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
I was probably playing too aggressive here. Like, the best thing to do would be to just wait for the skeletons to get into the front, have them eat a charge and not die, give ground, and then I can charge with the knights afterwards, after someone is already stuck there. Because what we
Yep.
learned in game 3 is okay, if Bretonia charges into a bunch of skeletons and they do some damage, that's cool. But then the next round, they're all like strength 3. Even if they're Grail
Yep.
Knights, they're strength 4 with AP 0
Shape.
on their
Yep.
attacks. So if the enemy just gives ground, it's like, wow, your damage just goes away.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Absorb those blows. Yep.
So the coolest thing that happened is that the Chaos Knights and stuff, they charged the Necrosphinx, which is out in the front. Necrosphinx just gave ground. And suddenly the thing I just described happened where, okay, the Tomb Kings are holding as the anvil out in front. They survived the damage. They can heal at least one of those wounds back from the priest. And now I can
Hmm.
counterattack with the knights. We had Herald with this unit, and it looks like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to make it. Well, guess what? Empire Knights are pretty much all drilled. So I got out of this problem by going 3 wide and still being able to charge in with Herald going around this right hand
Awesome.
side here. And remember, I'm going through terrain, so I can reroll that 1 if I needed to.
Hmm.
Um, what happened was Harold charged in, issues the challenge. I explained to Gary how it works. He's like, okay, so basically I just have to accept the Chaos Lord because otherwise you just kill 2 guys instead of 1, right? So he does. And then I realized, oh yeah, so you have Enchanting Aura, so you just get to hit me first. So Harold, who's got 3 wounds, toughness 4, and a 3+ armor save, has to just
Not the
allow a Chaos
best.
Lord to just swing at him before he gets to do anything, even though I charged.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then what happens is cool. Gary did no damage to me.
Bad dice. Bad dice.
Well, the one thing that was going really well for us is that the light of protection from the casket was giving my unit -1 to be hit. So Harold was weapon skill 7.
Ah,
So the Chaos Lord hit me on a 5+ because I was weapon skill 7 with -1 from casket. So that was
that's
great.
tough.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then I swing back with Harold. I've got hatred. I get 2 hits through, and then I roll a 6 to wound. So I said, Gary, I've rolled a killing blow. Right? You have to get your 5 up chaos armor save, or you're just dead. You just all 4 of your wounds just go away. He's like, okay. He rolls it. He rolls like a 2.
No, no.
So I killing blow like the 330-point chaos lord of my dude.
Hmm.
And then a couple turns later, um, So just so you know, the chapter master who's hanging out over here has been just belly bumping this chaos chariot that's over here forever because he's got a dragon slayer sword, so he just doesn't do as much damage as he kind of appears like he should. Um, and I brought that because I also just wanted to try to get like a lucky 6 on him as well. So I had kind of a killing blow guy and a monster slayer guy. And so we killing blow the chaos lord. And a couple rounds later, Harold's able to get these knights over here. We were able to overrun directly into the Knights of the Realm, so they don't get to countercharge, which is great. So they had
That's
to break
huge.
their break their
Hmm.
ranks. And because the Necrosync is able to just kind of fly out of the way, I was able to use Drilled and get nice and wide as I crashed into these Knights of the Realm over here, right?
Convenient.
Right. So then this turn, Harold and his unit were able to just smash the crap out of some Knights of the Realm who were strength 3, AP 0 because they didn't charge. So they're just
Hmm.
dudes. And when you have a 2+ armor save against AP 0 guys, you're like, wow, okay. Suddenly I'm
Hmm.
really survivable.
Yep.
Right. And the main thing I want to get to is the next really cool thing that happened was basically I was able to beat back these Knights of the Realm, get around and kind of flank into these Chaos Warriors. Wow, apparently this went on for a while. Yeah,
Yep.
so we were able to kind of set this up. I was threatening to flank charge. Gary was very smart. He won combat versus the demigryphs and then reformed and then was able to back up so that these knights couldn't see him anymore. I was like, damn it, I messed up. So it took an extra turn for me to kind of get into the forest where again I had to re-roll those ones because I'm charging through dangerous or difficult terrain, right?
Hmm.
And I got the Herald and the last demigryph into this unit. Now they had like 12 Chaos Warriors left, and after this combat was over, I had killing blowed the other sorcerer in this
Oh
combat.
no.
Yes. So I've killing blowed the second character in his army.
Oh, heads
This
everywhere.
and I had killed I think 8 or 9 chaos. Yeah, so I killed 5 chaos warriors and they were almost all now wiped out at this point. I think
Hmm.
this is one of the times where, for example, the double challenge was huge because he had a champion, he issued the challenge with the champion, Harold kills the champion. Great. Now I issue a challenge again, and then I kill the sorcerer. So the sorcerer couldn't hide for a turn, for example.
Yep. It's a big deal. Yeah.
Okay. On the other side of the table, this other thing finally happened because I had a Dragon Slayer sword dude, and guess what? I never rolled a 6 when he was fighting a Mangler Squig. He never was able to get into combat with the high elf monsters. But on this game, he well, first of all, he had a revenge mission against Elise Duchard because they've had a long history of trying to bite each other by demigryph heroes versus Elise Duchard in melee, and I have like an 0-2 record in that matchup. Um, because Elise Duchard, from our special rules, she turned into a frog because she miscast, and when you miscast and in this mission, and you're within range of these little hocus pocus pumpkins, you turn into a frog. So she was on like
Yeah.
weapon skill
For
1,
those of
attack
you who
1.
haven't read the event packet, right?
Yeah,
So our Horrors of the Old World event is Halloween themed.
yeah,
So all of our scenarios are based upon Halloween. This is our Hocus Pocus scenario, and so on the tables, you can see one of the pumpkins there. There's either witches' cauldrons or magical pumpkins, and effectively they work similar to like a Mortis Engine in the sense that it's +1 to cast if you're near them. So great, and it helps you with magic resistance if you're trying to resist things, but if you roll a miscast, you are automatically transmogrified and turned into a frog for 1 turn. So risk versus rewards, again, with our fun Halloween themed events. And so in this case, Eric wanted to that +1 to cast and to dispel with Elise, and oops,
yep.
turned himself into a frog.
And then he turned himself into the frog on the exact same turn that I was able to beat the chaos chariot with the demigryph.
Hmm.
And then I was like, great. So I've got 2 wounds left on this chapter master guy. He's gonna go charge Elise Duchard,
Hmm.
and she's a frog, so she's got weapon skill 1, strength 1, toughness 1. So other than
Hmm.
her wounds, everything's a
Not
1.
good.
And so I was like, great,
Yep.
I'll go beat up on her. And he was like, great, I'm gonna counter charge. So we go to do that. Um, he does beat Elise, which isn't that surprising. And then like on the second to last turn of the game, this Warfire Dragon is basically like the biggest threat we have left. It's kind of chomping its way through the Necrosphinx. It,
Yeah.
it got
Killed a
into
lot.
combat with the Tomb Guard, with the Tomb Prince in
Hmm.
there, and he was kind of chomping through those. And I was like, great, I've got a skirmishing guy with a Dragon Slayer sword. I'm going to charge into this Warfire Dragon, and I've got hatred, so I've got rerolls to hit, and I just have to get 1 lucky 6 with my 3 attacks. So like all of my attacks hit, and then I roll a 6, another one. So I'm like, great, okay. Guess what? The Warfire Dragon has a ward save against magical attacks, so it gets to
It
have a ward
does.
save. And he rolls the ward save, and he also rolls like a 2. So I
Oh,
so I monster slay the freaking Warfire Dragon again as well. So I've gotten 2 killing blows and a monster slayer. So my plan has finally started working, right?
brutal. You mean the luck gods finally felt mercy upon you?
It was only after I had killed it that I remembered that this thing explodes when it dies.
Oh yeah, it's a warpfire dragon. It's full of warpstone. Yeah.
The Elise had done a wound to me, so I had one left.
How
And
did that turn out?
and the Warfire Dragon blows up with like D6 strength 4 hits that have no saves.
It
And
hurts.
and he rolled like 5 hits against me. I'm like, great. So my guy who has no ward save and it only touches 4, like I'm boned. And so yeah, the Warfire Dragon exploded and killed this guy, which was great. It was fantastic.
Serves him right for shoving his sword down the throat of a warpfire dragon. What did he
Yeah.
think was going to happen?
I don't know.
It's just
But
one of
yeah,
those moments where he stabs it and it starts glowing really hot. He's like, "What did I do?" Too late.
yeah, for sure. I think the main takeaway I've had from this event is that, I mean, playing a thematic list when it's against an opponent's army that is not skewing in a way that you don't basically have any way to respond to is really fun. Like when
Yeah.
the enemy list is not all oops, all I have is poison arrows and all I have is catapults or whatever. It's really fun to just be like, I got this really thematic list. It's Knightly Order of Knights Panther. It's supposed to be like I hate chaos and everything. So when you kind of have that right fit, it's like, man, this game is just hilarious fun. And a lot
Yeah.
of things went bad for me too. The Knights the White Wolf. Oh yeah, so Knights the White Wolf, right? Everyone is super hot on them. They've got Furious Charge. Mike, how many inches do you have to charge for Furious Charge to work?
3.
What happens when you countercharge and roll a 1 on how far you countercharge?
You're going to be a sad panda.
So the Knights of the White Wolf get charged by like Peg Knights and a Chariot and everything. And I'm like, okay, so I countercharge. And this has happened in our practice game as well. I roll a 1 on the countercharge. So I don't get the Furious Charge.
Oh no!
And
And
Knights
you
of the
only
White
get
Wolf,
plus.
yeah, you don't get the strength either because the Knights
And
of the
you
White
don't
Wolf,
get.
you have to go 3 inches to get your +2 strength from your hammer, and you also have to go 3 inches to get your Furious Charge. So you get neither
And you're
bonus
gonna
if you fail
not
that.
get the 3, and you're not gonna get the +3 initiative because you only went 2 inches because it's only D3 plus 1.
Yeah, and Empire Knights or Inner Circle Knights have initiative 4. So if they actually go the 3 inches, they swing before like Knights of the Realm and Knights
Mm-hmm.
Errant, stuff like that. So they
If
actually
you
get
if
to
you go the
outfight.
3 inches,
Yes, and I didn't. In
yeah,
fact, the
big
Peg
swing.
Knights, the Riders, the Pegasus, so the Pegasi are in it 4, but the Riders are still
Yep,
initiative 3. So if I go the
yep,
3 inches and I get my higher strength, I swing before
big
them.
deal,
And
big
I'm
deal.
pretty sure I got the prayer off that gave me multi wounds 2. So if I had gone the 3 inches, I would have
Oh
2
wow!
attacks, strength 6, AP 2, and multi wounds 2 on all
You
of my
you would have
dudes
at least you would
before.
have at least killed a couple for sure.
Yeah, before they got to swing. And instead, I didn't go that far. So it was wacky for sure.
Oh, the dice give it, the dice taketh. So yeah, so let's be wrapping up the doubles event. I think the main thing is that there were definitely some meta challenges, but overall it was a fantastic weekend. People had an absolute blast. There were some great games, and so often the biggest thing I kept hearing when walking from table to table with people with smiles on their faces, this feels like Warhammer. This feels like two armies clashing on the table. It was super, super successful. I will say, to at least, we're not going to go through the winning roster list and such because we talk about a whole bunch of them in the pregame show, and they're all available on BCP. But I do want to say congratulations again to our best generals, to Greg and to Zach, who they didn't take a Cathay or a list, but they decided to go against the meta of the shooting, and they went with an attrition, vampire count, and Tomb King combo list. So congratulations, guys! You did an awesome job. You definitely played 4 challenging games to make it all the way there. As we said before, Eric and Gary, congratulations to our best sportsmanship, the most important award at all our events. And on the painting side, it was Leo, and who was Leo partnered with? Do you recall?
I actually don't. It was a newer person, and so that's a good example of how I'm sure that Leo probably brought someone from his neck of the woods because he comes down from Burbank. So just having
Was it David?
this yeah, this doubles event really attracted more people from wider afield that they wanted to go to it, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's really cool. And we'll hopefully get a lot of feedback. We always do a survey at the end to just see what do people think. I know that surely there
Mm-hmm.
was at least one question that was able to be open ended to say, what do you think about sky lanterns and how much do you hate them? Um, because I think
Well,
Mike, you had
we'll
something
plug
like
more
eight
info.
people come talk to you and be like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but we're not going to make this video about that for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking up real quick because I want to make sure we're calling them out. Zach, Craig. Yeah, it was David. Yeah, I was right. No, I was right. So
Yeah.
yeah, congratulations to Leo and David. Beautiful armies out there. We did our, as always, our raffle winner for everyone who shows up with a battle ready army. We want to do positive reinforcement for our players. So if they showed up with battle painted army, they get into the raffle. So someone gets a prize to pick from the prize table just from being battle ready. And of course, our trivia. This is the first time I learned how to post the Kahoot. So in case you'd like to partake or test your own old world Halloween trivia of, how do you say it again, Evan?
Geheimnisnacht.
I was getting Geheimnisnacht. Yes, thank you. So that is posted on our social channels. You can find it on our Discord or on our Facebook or Instagram in case you want to do, since I figured out how to post it so other people can join. I always make a new trivia for our events. So that was fun as well. So excited to share that with other people. So any last closing thoughts? Of course, we were really excited about doubles. It was a huge hit. We're definitely going to do this again in the future. Evan, any last thoughts, sir?
I think my main thought is that I just want to see more and more different formats, whether that's smaller point sizes or bigger point sizes or narrative events or different kinds of comp. Like I know a lot of people are like, Highlander is kind of just like a simple idea. It's very easy to explain in one sentence. So that's kind of what I'm really excited for. And I'm hoping that the main reason why Doubles was successful was because, hey, it's different. No one else is doing this right now in this area, so people are like, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna take the time off work, or I'm gonna get a hotel because I want to make sure I'm there for the once a year opportunity to do this different way to play.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and everyone said they want to come back. So definitely, we all love Old World, but the main thing is singles is great, but there are other great formats to play this in there. And clearly, at least our community is showing they're definitely ready for variety. They're excited to try new things. We're excited to also start experimenting with narrative, siege, and other formats going into next year. And we're excited to do doubles again in the future.
All right, so just everybody at home, stay legendary. Our link to our Discord is in our description. If you've watched this far and you really like our content, you can always like and subscribe to the channel and like the video. And see you all next time.
See you then.